Assalamu alaikum. Today I have a thematic lecture on Iranian Revolution, the Shah versus Imam, a religious political manifestation. Move onward, we need to discuss the Iranian Revolution of 1979. In its background, we can say that the revolution in Iran is termed by the historians as one of the biggest historical events into the past 100 years. We have to ask ourselves that what is a revolution? A revolution is a mass movement that aims to establish a new political regime by violently transforming the existing government. The Iranian Revolution of 1979 violently ended the monarchy of Raza Pahlavi and replaced it with an Islamic Republic. The Shah reign had been briefly interrupted between 1951 and 1953 with the interlude of Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. This revolution is regarded as the main turning point of the Islamic world, as it opened the eyes of those Islamic states, although being powerful with the riches of oil, are still being played under Western powers. We have to look at the historical elements that lead up to the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Because we all know that post-World War II created a very different world. Colonial control of much of the Middle East, Asia, Africa, South American states were on the wane. And two superpowers emerged on the world map. One was United States and the other one Union of Soviet Socialist Republic or Soviet Union. To move onwards, we have to discuss again more in detail that what were the actual reasons. When we discuss Iran Revolution, we have to find out the background and the actual reasons responsible for this revolution. So, Iranian Revolution was totally different to popular Western misconceptions. The Iranian Revolution of the late 1970s was remarkable in that it was motivated by a large alliance of classes and religious groups within Iran, each with similar social, economic, political, and religious agendas. These groups were united in a majority in their initiative to topple the Shah kingship due to his heavy-handed and dictatorial style of rule. Additionally, these various groups and organizations were deeply dissatisfied with restrictions on access to the political process, the tight concentration of Iran's huge oil revenues into the hands of a very small elite group orbiting around the Shah, as well as a growing perception that Iran was becoming too westernized and had lost her grounding in Iranian traditional values and cultures. See the theme as well as a rationale of the revolution. We have to ask this question that why such kind of revolutions took place in history. For example, the Chinese Revolution is there, a Russian Revolution is there, French, American, these revolutions are there. And these revolutions had a particular agenda to assemble the people and to topple the existing government with a new one. Same was the case with Iranian Revolution, that the Iran Revolution had a rational and thematic style. And what was that? So, to define and discuss these types of things, we need to understand the rationale of Iranian Revolution. So, Iranian Revolution of 1979 has been described as one of the epochal events of the 20th century, inaugurating a period of Islamic revivalism and struggles against modernization in many nations, where Islam, the prominent religion. 1979 revolution, the significance of Islamic fundamentalism, the use of political repression by the regime of Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, and particularly the violence perpetrated by SEVAK, the secret police, widespread corruption by individual public officials and members of the oligarchic economic elite, as well as official favoritism, rising income inequality, and the impact of Western imperialism have all played casual. However, there has been a marked paucity of discussions of the way the 1979 revolution was shaped by struggles over class processes, defined as the particular forms in which surplus labor was produced and distributed. In particular, discussions of the 1979 revolution have failed to recognize the role of conflict within the ranks of capitalist appropriators and the importance of ancient direct producers and their allied agents in the collapse of the conflict summary of the Iranian Revolution. It was the first in a series of mass popular civil insurrections which would result in the overthrow of authoritarian regimes in dozens of countries over the next 3 decades. Unlike most of the other uprisings that would topple dictators in Latin America, Eastern Europe, and parts of Asia and Africa, the result of the Iranian struggle was not the establishment of liberal democracy, but of a new form of authoritarianism. However, except for a series of short battles using light weaponry in the final hours of the uprising, the revolutionary forces themselves were overwhelmingly nonviolent. The autocratic monarchy of Mohammad Raza Shah Pahlavi faced a broad coalition of opposition forces, including Marxists and constitutional liberals. But the opposition ultimately became dominated by the mullahs, clergy class of the country's Shia hierarchy. Despite severe repression against protesters, a series of demonstrations and strikes over the previous 2 years came to a peak in the fall of 1978 as millions of opponents of Shah regime clogged the streets of Iran. Cities and work stoppages paralyzed the country. Even concerned with the Shah's pro-Axis sympathies, British and Soviet troops occupied the country, forcing the Shah to abdicate in favor of his son Mohammad Raza Pahlavi. As the economic situation deteriorated and political unrest grew, a power struggle ensued between the young Shah and the elected prime minister. With the Shah fleeing into exile in 1953, a CS-sponsored coup soon transferred and ousted Mossadegh and his nationalist supporters and returned the Shah to power as an absolute monarch. Were returned to their foreign owners, the Majlis was largely stripped of its power, and leftists, nationalists, Islamists, and all other opponents to the regime were ruthlessly suppressed. In this scenario, the Iranian Revolution relied on many methods of unarmored insurrection, such as demonstrations, strikes, boycotts, contestation, and public space, and the establishment of the parallel institutions that would be used in the Philippines, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and elsewhere in subsequent years. Despite the bloody image of the revolution and the authoritarianism and the militarism of the Islamic Republic that followed, there was a clear commitment to keeping the actual insurrections unarmored. Protesters were told by them, indeed, thousands of troops deserted, some in the middle of confrontations with crowds, and missionaries smuggled and distributed the audio cassette tapes of Ayatollah Khomeini speaking about the revolution played a key role in the movement mass mobilization, and led Abul Hassan Sadegh an official with the Ministry of National Guidance. The tape cassettes are stronger than fighter planes. The Ayatollah Khomeini's speeches circulated through such covert methods emphasize the power of unarmored resistance and non-cooperation. In the history of this revolution, we need to approach the basic principles of these points or these principles which were used as the major points in Iranian Revolution. So these are the 6 major points in the Iranian Revolution. The first one, a broad coalition of opposition forces came together to overthrow a dictatorial regime, building on long-standing social grievances, but also energizing nationalist sentiments against a state and ruler seen as too compliant to foreign interests. The coalition mobilized under the Ayatollah Khomeini's leadership ranged from liberal and Marxist to conservative and religious forces. In effect, a classic populist alliance. The second point is the victory of the revolution both required and were facilitated by the state's weakness of leadership and internal divisions. The Shah was ill, his advisors and generals were uncertain. The resemblance to other figures and regimes in a time of crisis is 16 and Tsar Nicholas II as well as Charles I of England, the same fate they got. And third point is the revolution possessed the quality that distinguishes mere coups d'état or rebellions from major revolutions. Namely, it was not just political in the sense of changing the political elite and the constitution or legitimizing system of the country, but had proportional and economic consequences. Because of it, Iran today, the revolution's core ideology may have propounded the need for a new radical and egalitarian order, but it was supplemented by pre-existing ideas that were crucial to sustaining domestic support, above all nationalism and a sense of the country's historic standing and mission. That is the explosion of revolution at the center of a multi-ethnic country and driven especially from within its dominant ethnic component had profound reverberations on the relations between the state and society for this lecture. So if there are any questions, please ask your question in the comment section.